Welcome to a new episode of Manage to Retain, where I talk about issues around business for employees, your customers, recruiting, retention, productivity, and profitability. And I do it with my friends, Sherri and Lou. Listen in, you might get a few tips here on how to do leadership better.
Hi there, and welcome to the brand new episode of Manage to Retain with my friends Sherri and Lou. Sherri and Lou, how are you all doing today?
Good.
Great, Vinay. Thanks for having us.
Always good to be here.
Yeah, we always have some good discussions, and I always walk away having learned something from this. Regardless of the size or expanse of it, there's always a nugget in here. And I think the place that I want to explore a little bit today is this idea of we've got all these people working for us. We've heard about the great resignation and people just being disengaged. I mean, I heard a fantastic stat that said 74% of people in the workplace, at least in the United States, are disengaged. That means 74%, 74 cents out of every dollar is just kind of going down the drain for all intents and purposes. And it's because they don't know that the value that they bring to the organization. And there's a whole bunch of conversations we can have around that. But that element of, do they matter? Are they significant to the organization? Does that matter, Sherri and Lou, with all the leadership training that you all do for organizations?
Well, yeah, because no training in the world is going to really fill that gap, right? I mean, it's just the reality of it. You can certainly look at companies. Many of our listeners, I'm sure, will have the experience of working for people or experienced companies where they provide you all the training in the world, but then there's just that one thing that they just don't feel a part of it. You don't feel engaged enough.
And at least I'll talk about myself. And the jobs where I felt like I was actually, I'm got my hand on the rope and I'm pulling the cart forward and the cart moves because of me. I put a lot more back into it, if you will, to try to get that cart to move forward. And I'm using a lot of analogies here. But I think that's what most people, I believe fundamentally, most people want to do good work and they want to be successful at their job, but sometimes they don't know if it matters or not. And someone needs to let them know. And I feel like lots of times leaders feel like that's kind of touchy-feely, squishy stuff, but it really adds results. I mean, do you all agree with that? Do you all see that as well?
That's what it's all about. And leader, whether it's leadership, leading yourself is where it comes down to first. But we as leaders, and even if we're not titled leaders, but we're responsible to be bringing people along and developing people in a way that gets the bottom line accomplished. We need to understand that we had mentioned this previous to this conversation. Is what is their purpose? Like what can we show them that gives them the significance, right? As you mentioned, what does that look like? And that's where we're going to really be impressive to those that we lead. And we all want to be and feel significant. We all want to have that value. We all want to look at it as like, without me, this wouldn't happen. I had a part in this movement. And that's where we are today, right? This is an employee market. Employees will pick a spot and they have options. In most industries, there are some that it's a little different, but most industries right now, which means that we're going to pick companies that we feel are going to not just that I'm not just going to be able to add value to them, but they're going to make me feel significant value that I'm doing that, right? That's important to know.
Yeah. So here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to bring something up on screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up, we're all looking at information from all the various pieces of software we have all over the place. I like to show you how that could be organized into a graphical format. So you can take a look at it and show you the story of an individual. And I'd like to approach it from that place of significance and how we can make that person feel like not only are they a contributing member to the team, but they've got their superhero talents. Yeah. So we can draw out even better. So give me a moment here. I'm going to share my screen and let's see if we can. There you go. So real quick, we're looking at a company that's got 3 different locations. You can see Phoenix, Houston, and Dallas. So we're looking at Alex S., who is a member of the Dallas branch, part of this larger company. The average person in that company, in that role, is doing a 53 out of 100. And in this case, Alex is performing a 54, so just slightly above average. And here's the way it breaks down. You can see how they perform in a couple of different dimensions. So there's lots of pieces to a human. It's not just one dimension to human. Mm-hmm. Humans are complex creatures with lots of different things that color the way they do. So their driver behavior, how efficient they are as an employee, what their employee experience is, how do they feel about the place they work, their net promoter score, their customer service rating. Are they getting 5 stars? Or are they getting 1 star? Their skills mastery and their ability to refer jobs into the home office when they see needs for their customers. And you can kind of see a graphical representation of that here, where this blue area represents Alex and the gray represents the average. I want to stop here for a second and just ask you all a question, see what you all see. Is Alex significant here? And how would you talk about that?
Well, he absolutely is. I mean, if you take a look at the average person on their driver behavior and efficiency, and even their experience, you're going to see that Alex is well above that, and his skills assessment, whatever that skill assessment was specifically. I mean, you can see that there is serious significant. If you look at it really from the movement perspective, and we as leadership developers, it's kind of what we love to do is develop leaders and bring some things to awareness, is we don't change means movement, right? So I like to take the word change and make it movement. We just need to move. If we take that, Alex, that blue part, and we just take it, just move it ever so slightly this way. Now we have not just significance that we currently see, but we put the significance in the right perspective. And so what do we need to do the question always is, what do we need to do as a leader, as a manager of Alex, to move that significance into where it is that we want to move it? And how do we get him to do it? That's the question.
Yeah, I'm writing something down as we're talking here. I like this idea of a maturity kind of curve in terms of an employee. First is presence. They've got to be there. You move that presence towards significance, right? Mm-hmm. As in they matter, they move the needle for the organization. And finally, that moves towards excellence, where they can really start to hit home runs every single day. Does that make sense to you all as well? Yeah,
I'm liking it. Now you got to create an acronym for that now. I love it.
PSA, Public Service Announcement. Right?
There you go.
But just looking at Alex here, I mean, I'm just starting to see a narrative is developing in my head. Their net promoter score, their customer service score is low, and their tech referrals, the amount of times they're selling things or upselling customers and adding additional value to their customers is low as well. So I might say, I guess that Alex might be an introvert, doesn't necessarily like talking to people so much, or is a little more quiet on the quiet side, because they're a very conscientious driver. They're very good at their role. They're happy. They have got mastery in their skill set, and they just don't know how to approach customers and tell them, hey, there's something else we can do for you. So as a result, they shy away from it. Uh-huh. And so now you've got this employee who's an introvert. I'm just making up a story. Hopefully you can see that as well. But how do we make Alex feel significant? I think that's part of what we just talking about, is this introvert is not a bad thing. It's just what they are. How do we turn that into go from significance to excellence, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's funny because it's interesting. We talk about analogies a lot, and I don't know if you remember they're probably still out now that they're coming back, whatever maybe. But remember old school Transformers, the cartoons? Remember those? Love those things, right? And there was a good about it. You still have some on your shelf by your National Geographic. But the Transformers, right? Transformers were when they, as an example, if they were a semi trailer, a truck without the trailer, and they were driving that, and they no longer could move along the path with that, they would transform into something that could walk through that path. You see, us as leaders are responsible to help them see where they can transform what they're doing to become better at what they do, to utilize their current skill in a different way. And Alex has the ability, with his efficiency and his desire to do well and loving his job, to just be able, as you mentioned, to transform that into, now how can we round this out, Alex? How can we round this out? And we use the personality that he has. We find out what it is that drives him. And like you said, perhaps it's just a matter of saying, hey, you know what? Yeah, Alex says, well, I really don't like selling. I really don't like to push things on people that they don't want. It might be just us to say, well, you don't really know if they want it unless you say, hey, by the way, I noticed this because you love what you do. You noticed this and you don't want them to have to call you back next month. That's not really selling. That's providing a solution. Maybe that's what Alex needs to hear. And Alex says, well, that's really cool. That's a good way to do it. I think I can do that. Now, all of a sudden, you begin to transform Alex, his skills, into something that he now can use that he wasn't able to do before.
Or I was thinking it's just pulling out his strengths and just zoning in on those strengths of his zone of genius, right? And we talked about that. And he's just not on the other side. It's just not his strength at all. But we still, as a leader, need to give them the tools and the resources and the equipping necessary. So at least we can say, okay, he's tried it, and it's just not his strength whatsoever. Let's keep moving in the strength zone and keep moving in that productivity.
It's a learned process.
Yeah.
We're all in the process of learning some new ways and new perspectives. I mean, I'm a big musician, and the drummer for Def Leppard, this is an 80s reference, all right, people, but and the Def Leppard, he was an amazing drummer when they started off. He was in a terrible car accident, lost both of his arms and one of his legs, if I'm not mistaken. One of his arms and one of his legs. No, just one of his arm. I'm sorry, just one of his arms. And so I want to make sure he didn't take all his limbs, but just one of his arms he lost. But he had to relearn how to play as an amazing drummer and how to play differently. And it's amazing how he ended up turning that around and making him play better than many drummers ever played thereafter. This is an interesting thing because, yes, we want to use their skill set and say, what are they good at? But what are they good at that we can use to transform into making something else better?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we can do with people, somebody like Alex.
So I'm really happy about this conversation for two reasons. Number one, I used to listen to Def Leppard, and I can say that, Mom, Dad, I remember all those times I used to listen to that and you didn't want me to. It was good for my leadership skills. And number two is, Mom and Dad, I used to watch those cartoons at 4 p.m. after school on WTVZ, and Optimus Prime taught me a lesson about leadership as well.
You're darn right, he did.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of shift to another screen here, because I think here's one more step that we have that will allow a company to use something like this to help or support people in that transformation of significance and to excellence, right? And this is a report card that would be sent out in an automated fashion, a scorecard for Alex in this case, right? Mm-hmm. He would get his behavior graph like he did, but it would tell him, here's how you're doing. This is how the overall score for the company is, and here's how you're doing against that. So you're getting pretty close to that average there. And here are the places where you can start to work on in terms of numerical format as opposed to this table format. So this net promoter score, how do we do that? That's the place to work on. So we could sit down and start to show the ways and the methods that others are doing it, because we can see that Casey, Kenneth, and Joseph, they're actually doing quite well. They can be people who can help emphasize. If you want to take this 90 to be even higher, there's Ian, Brad, and Alex can confer with them to try to use those super strengths and become even better at it. But I think using this just kind of gives them the tools and equips them to use that principle that you all talk about, equips them to do better and become significant and transition towards that excellence. Does that sound right?
That's 100% right. I mean, and I love that you pointed out that the equipping principle, we need to provide them what's necessary to do their job well. And a lot of times that's another person. That's what we do, right? Another person can certainly open up the doors for us. We talked about this the other day in so many ways. There's always someone there that helps open up the doors for us to get to the next level. And this scorecard is going to provide Alex or anyone that gets this, the feedback that most of us want, that will give us the necessary, it'll bring to mind questions like, how do I make my 5 better? How do I do this better? That's what Alex is going to do because he loves what he does. And that's when us as a leader needs to step in with Alex and go over this with him and give him ways that we can make this better. And if we don't, as a leader, know what we can do to make that better, then we need to find out. So we can provide Alex with not just a scorecard feedback, but really good feedback on how we can make it better.
So I want to stop the screen sharing here. I'd like to maybe kind of come back and summarize a little bit of this idea of the presence is already there. The people are already in your organization. Making that bridge towards significance where they can understand how they actually contribute to the organization, how they actually move the needle for the organization, is on the pathway to them reaching excellence and your organization reaching excellence. I think I heard the equipping principle as one. I mean, you all have 10 principles that you use. I heard equipping. Would you talk a little more about those principles and what they are, and maybe the equipping and anything else you think that's relevant?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll start just real quick. So the equipping principle in short, is to provide the bow and the arrow. So here's a common situation where somebody in not even necessarily leadership, but in a workforce, they get promoted. They're a new leader. They have lots of people now that they need to manage, and they say, congratulations. And I'm like, okay, great. And then they walk away. And then the person 6 months later gets a really bad report card because they did not meet any of their metrics. Excuse me. And see, it's not 100% their fault because they only gave just so much of information. Mm-hmm. And a lot of us in a lot of generations, such as and I can speak for myself, where we had the trial by fire approach, where it's like, well, here's your job, right? And have fun and good luck and hope it works. Well, let's stop doing that. You're not doing it. You're doing a huge disservice with your team where you're telling them, here, go hunt, but you're only giving them the bow and not the arrow. So the point is, for the equipping principle, is making sure you're giving the full amount of resources, their tools for their toolbox so they can do their job appropriately and the best that they can do so they can have the results that you want, which is in the end, if you're looking for the money situation, because we're all at the end of the day, it is, we want money, of course, but let's provide everything that we can so it can be profitable at the end of the day for everyone. So,
like that bow and the arrow, you just give them to the leader. You've got to show them how to use them.
Yes.
Be effective. And the 10 principles that every leader must follow to lead with influence, what we've come up with these 10 principles. The whole purpose that we've done this for is to really replace the old leadership playbook of top-down positional style leadership. Do your job, do it now, get the job done. I don't care what else you do. That's gone away. Anyone who's listening has tried that method before. I have. Trust me, early in my career, it doesn't work well. It's not long-term, doesn't create long-term success. It might be an overnight moment. You get some success in the bottom line momentarily, but it's not something you can do consistently. We need to develop. And I love this scorecard opportunity because the scorecard data will provide us as leaders the ability to say, now I know what I need to do to equip this person to do their job well. So it's a win-win situation here.
Yeah. So if you all listening in have found some utility on this, please follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel or follow us on LinkedIn. Sherri and Lou are people who constantly put in posts out that I think you'll get some real significant value out of. But they also provide training around those 10 principles that help leaders lead with influence. Did I get that right? Close-ish.
You got it.
So I highly recommend that you follow them or reach out to them if you want some help in terms of how to communicate better as a leader, how to lead with more influence as a leader. The graphs that you saw, if that's interesting to you and you want to be able to see how you can see the narratives in real time, here's the best part. You already have all the information you have. You already have the information to create those graphs in your organization. Just need the tool to put it all together. If you want tools to be a better leader, that's what I do at Carmo. Reach out to me and I'll be more than happy to help. But hopefully this was of value so that you could start to find out with your people who is present, who is significant, and who can be excellent. Thank you so much, Sherri and Lynn.
Thank you, Vinay.
Thank you.